Good evening all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, I'm fuming tonight. I've just seen Sky News coverage of a march that went on in Sunderland on Sunday. The march was against the grooming gangs. And how many times have we seen these marches before? Rotherham, Rochdale, Bristol, Oxford. I could carry on. The Sky News reporters turned around and said that it was an anti-Muslim rally. And they criticised the marchers, called them far right. I'm sorry, this narrative now is just really beginning to get on my nerves, because I've been doing street politics for the last 8 years. Labour will tell you I was EDL. I was never EDL. I'm quite proud to turn around and say that I stand alongside the guys from March for England, the originals, who've been doing this for far longer than I have. And what they're trying to do is smear ordinary people with concerns as far right. Now, there are some big issues with this. We've seen this before, which is when working class people turn around and say, we're not happy with this, we're not happy with that. They turn around and say, oh, you're a racist, get back in your box. Blah, blah, blah. In the 1990s, the so-called party of the working class, the Labour Party, ignored the working class. They looked down on the working class. They were infiltrated by the middle class intelligentsia. All this about them being, worried about the working class now. If you look at them, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's an upper middle class grammar school boy who's never done a day's work in his life. He's always lived in the bubble, but yet he's supposed to be the voice of the working class. Well, what we saw in the 90s was when working class people were pushed aside, brushed under the carpet, there was a party came along that started saying things that they might not have liked, but they said some things that they did like. And what we saw from that, in desperation by the working class, was the rise of the BNP. I don't want to see that again. Nobody wants to see that again. But this is what happens when you ignore people. Now, two things happened to stop that. One was that the BBC had Nick Griffin on Question Time. And he went on Question Time and he was exposed for what he was. A perfect example of free speech, because the BBC got one of their biggest ever audiences for Question Time, because people wanted to see what it was all about. That was free speech actually destroying a man with extremist views. The same people who turned up to protest against the march in Sunderland on Sunday were the same people who were outside that BBC Question Time attacking the police. And yes, that was our old friend Wayman Bennett from Hope Not Hate who got arrested that night for whacking a police officer with a pole. If they'd have got their way, Nick Griffin would never have been allowed on Question Time, and he would never have been allowed to have been cross-examined, and he would never have been destroyed on national TV, which took the wind out of their sails. But there was also a second thing that actually turned around and destroyed the BNP, and that was the rise of UKIP. Because you actually had a party there who were turning around and saying, we oppose mass uncontrolled migration. Not because we object to somebody because of their race, the country they're coming from, the colour of their skin. UKIP turned around and said, this isn't about race, it's about space. It's about the fact that we've got a housing crisis, we've got pressure on infrastructure, and as a result, the numbers are unsustainable because we can't deal with this. And UKIP were then slated. Before that, we were just gadflies and what was it David Cameron called us? Gadflies, nutters and closet racists. But the reality is UKIP had the right idea about uncontrolled migration, and UKIP was slated as far right and racist and this and that and the other. And I was very disappointed actually today to see Nigel Farage, who's one of my political heroes, and I've met Nigel a number of times. Love the guy to death, but for him to turn around and be interviewed by Sky and say, oh, you're associating with the wrong people, this, that and the other. The DFLA and well, They're turning around and calling Veterans Against Terrorism far right. I've got friends in Veterans Against Terrorism, and people like Richard Inman and people like Norman. These aren't racist. These are just people who are concerned about the way our country's going and don't want to see the working class of this country seeing our children groomed, raped, and things covered over. And if you turn around and keep saying, oh well, you can't turn, the stand up to racism campaigners, oh, it doesn't matter what skin colour you are, a nonce is a nonce. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But there are two types of nonces. There are type 1, which are the grooming gangs, and type 2, which are your traditional style, furtive, 1 and 2 individuals, let's keep it quiet because we know what we're doing is wrong sort of nonce. The type 2 is between 85 to 90% white Caucasian, which is in line with the population of the country. They're scum and they deserve to be jailed. But if you look at the type 1 grooming gang, the type 1 paedophile crimes, which are grooming gangs, 84% are Pakistani Muslims. That 84% make up 2% of the population. Oh, you can't say that, you're a racist. Well, actually, that's not me saying that. That's the Quilliam Foundation, which is a leading anti-extremist think tank. And the people at the top of the Quilliam Foundation are people like Majid Nawaz, the LBC presenter, and they are progressive Muslims who basically see the issues and they want them addressed and they want it sorted out. Because most of the Pakistani Muslim British population are decent people. But there's obviously a problem because it's disproportionate, the amount of them who are committing these crimes. And unless you turn around and look at the source of the problem, rather than brushing it under the carpet and saying you can't say that, it's racist, how can you ever sort the problem out? And it's not just our young girls who suffer, it's also the Pakistani Muslim population. When this is brushed under the carpet, the decent people amongst that part of our community, and most of them are decent people, are then tarred with the same brush because the establishment are covering it up. That is how you get division. So what needs to happen is the government need to listen to the genuine worries of the protesters on that march in Sunderland and the other marches that have gone on. Stop shouting racist, because it's not racism. I've met victims of the grooming gangs. Some of the stories I've heard are horrendous. And I've also met an extremely courageous lady from Marius called Tony Bugle, who has helped so many girls, and a lot of them are from the Muslim community who have been beaten up and abused by their husbands. She's been branded a racist. She's no racist, she's just concerned about girls and young women being beaten and abused and treated in a way that the likes of the Labour Party say they want equality for women. So how can they turn a blind eye to these kind of crimes? So come on guys, let's wake up, let's get this done. Let's look at it properly, let's get it sorted out.